I've been getting messages from people saying, you don't really use plywood. What are you talking about? I use plywood all the time for everything. You won't believe what I use plywood for. Toolbox, shelf, plywood, drawers, plywood, more drawers, plywood, mini router table, and jigs. This jig, that jig, this jig, that jig, that jig, that jig, plywood. Jigs are key in every workshop. Dovetail, alignment. And this, it's a template for a table leg. And this, it's the push stick for the table saw. Saves your fingers. And this, it's a circular saw guide. And this, it's a router guide. And this, frame clamping jig, plywood, chair leg template, mocks and vise. I'd go as far as to say that without plywood, this workshop would come to an absolute standstill. Plywood is the most useful material for any woodworker, for any workshop, just about for anything. So you're gonna have to come along on a tour with me so that I can just really rub your nose, because I've had enough of these people who's the naysayers. You don't use plywood. Bollocks. I use plywood a lot, all the time, for everything. And all different kinds of plywood, everything from birch ply to shutter ply and everything in between. Because why? It's versatile, it's cheap, you can use it for everything. Everything, you name it, you can use it. Now, I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of the workshop. So instead of sitting there accusing me of not using plywood, I'm going to show you how much I use it and make you feel bad for you not using it. So there, take that in your face, buddy. Hand cutting dovetails? Make yourself a dovetail alignment board. Guess what it's made from? Plywood. And this, it's a template for a table leg made from plywood. Doesn't ever get damaged, it just does what it does. We trace it, we make it, we store it for next time. And this, it's the push stick for the table saw. Saves your fingers. Hey, what's this? It's a woodworker ordering 5 pieces of plywood. If you don't use a push stick, you're going to lose your fingers, okay? I mean, like all 5 of them. There are 3 kinds of people in this world, those who can count and those who can't. And this, it's a circular saw guide. It guides your circular saw, just in a straight line, but it's made from plywood. Again with the ply, gotta love ply. Straight, very straight. And this, haven't used it in a while. It's a router guide, made from plywood. It's got a flap, flappity flap, made from plywood. Just like that. Want to know how to use one? Stick around. And these, plywood. And these, it's a frame clamping jig, plywood. Toolbox, plywood. Shelf, plywood. Drawers, plywood. More drawers, plywood. Plywood. And this, plywood. Mini router table. Got to make one. I'll show you. Ask us how. Plywood, but plywood. Every time. Winner, winner. Chicken dinner. And jigs. This jig, that jig, this jig, that jig, that jig, that jig. Plywood. Tapering jig. Cut off sled. Router circle cutting jig. Bandsaw circle cutting jig. Plywood. Rabbiting jig. Plywood, 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 plywood. Push stick. Plywood. Box cutting jig. Angle box cutting jig. Fancy. Very fancy jig. But plywood. Saves money. Don't have to buy the real thing. Make it from plywood. Right. Let's go see some more stuff. All right, just managed to find some of my jigs. There's lots, but we can make them all. It's okay. I'll show you guys how to do it. Saving a lot of money making them out of plywood. Jigs are key in every workshop. You should have jigs, lots of them. As many as possible. This is just some of the jigs that I use. No such thing as too many jigs. Gotta have jigs, plywood jigs. Lots of them. I might have a problem. We're not done yet. Let's go upstairs. And this, it's a chop for a vise, a front chop made from plywood. Don't be a chop. Use plywood to make your chop. Chop. And this, it's a bench hook. Gotta get one. Everybody should have one. Brilliant. Best invention ever. Make one. Quick, quick. 5 minutes. Best 5 minutes you'll ever spend. Bench hook. Chair leg template. Plywood. Because it's stable and it doesn't bend and it keeps its shape and I can get consistency. Make my life easy because of plywood. And this, a plywood box. A what box? I said plywood. Plywood. And this, mocks and vise. Plywood. It's a vise that you can make in less than a half an hour. It's a portable vise. You can take it with you. You can put it on your bench top. You can put it on your kitchen table. You can put it anywhere you like. But it can also be like, you know, for the gym bunnies. You can use this as a weight. Want some advice? Make a vise out of ply. And this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. and this. Plywood. It's a bar stool seat. A seat for a bar stool, for your bum. Out of plywood. Plywood. Again, with the plywood. Simple, quick, effective, cheap, fast, easy, stable. Plywood. Plywood. It's the stuff. And this, planing stop for hand tools. What can plywood not do? Can plywood fly? Yep, turns out it can. It can fly. And this, box, plywood, for chisels. Shelves, plywood, more shelves, plywood, more shelves, plywood, more shelves, plywood. And this, Moxon vise. On my workbench. Look, it's plywood. Want to make a cool vise that costs you nothing and works really well? Make a Moxon vise out of plywood. Attach it to your workbench. Boom. There you go. You got another thing. I'm getting tired of saying the word plywood, man. So you think we don't use plywood here? Well, yeah, guess what? You're wrong. Plywood. Everybody who's anybody uses plywood. If you don't use plywood, you're nobody. You ain't nobody. Got to use plywood. So for those of you that don't use plywood in your workshop, shame on you. Get with the program. Quickly. Hurry up. Do it. And for those of you that do use plywood in your workshop, give yourself a great big high five. Woo! Drop a comment in the comment section below. Let us know which one of these items you want us to make a video about. If you want to see more of these videos, then hit the button to subscribe.